So why exactly am I doing this to myself? Well, have you ever wondered what terms like VO2 max, lactic threshold and power zones mean, and how important they are, especially to an old cyclist like me who's undertaken a number of endurance cycling challenges at the moment? Assuming they are important, I also want to know how accurate my Garmin watch is in telling me what these values are. Finally, and most importantly, how does this all relate to the amount of cake I can eat? To find out, I'm off to be tested in one of the top fitness labs in the country. I have several challenges going on at the moment: scratch tropical climbs, top tropical climbs and some gravel bike riding, but I'm really planning to step it up this year by undertaking the North Cape 4000 endurance cycle ride in the summer. Okay, so it's about 4.5 months to go before the North Cape ride, and I need to really find out what my fitness levels are and what I need to do to make sure I'm good enough to complete it. And to enable me to do that, I'm going to need science. And so I've come to the Porsche Human Endurance Centre to see how fit I am and what plans I need to do to get ready for the ride. I've not only come to help with my endurance bike ride training, but basically my ego has told me I need to come. It expects me to be super fit. So let's hope I don't let it down. So back at the lab I met Jack, their top fitness boffin, who explained what this procedure I was going to undertake was. What he didn't explain was how much it was going to hurt.
Alright, so yeah, we're here to do a combined VO2 max and lactate threshold test here today with Kevin at the Porsche Human Performance Centre. We're going to start off with a test of body composition using the analyzer on the back wall there, and also skin fold calipers, before we then get Kevin on the bike, hooked up to the metabolic cart. We'll be measuring respiratory gases to quantify things like his VO2 max. And we'll also be taking bloods from Kevin to understand his lactate response to exercise. That gives us a really good indication of his cardiovascular fitness and help him understand how he can improve moving forward.
The first thing that hurt were the calipers used as part of the process to measure my body composition. Next, it was onto the bike for part 1 of my fitness test. This test will measure my aerobic and then my lactic threshold. This result is important as it gives the point at which I become unable to maintain a steady effort. To do the test, you start pedalling away, and every 3 minutes the bike increases the effort by 25 watts. You do this until Jack tells you to stop, because your lactic has reached 4 millimoles per litre. He knows this because of the following.
I'll be taking a very minor fingerprint blood sample at the end of this stage.
I believe what Jack just said was he would be taking a very minor pinprick of blood sample at the end of each 3 minutes. Well, let's see how minor it turned out to be. So then, kitted up, it was time to start pedalling until we got to the end of the first 3 minutes, ready for the first blood to sample. And this is the second thing that proper hurt, as he took 7 pinpricks out of the same finger during the lactic threshold test. That's a lot of blood and a lot of holes. The results of this test were going to be the most useful to help me in my North Cape 4000 challenge. This annual event goes from Lake Garda in Italy to the furthest point north in Europe, which is North Cape at the tip of Norway. You have 3 weeks to complete the trip, and if you manage it, you get a sticker, I think. It's limited to 500 entrants, and you have to be totally unsupported, so you're responsible for your own accommodation, nutrition, bicycle maintenance, etc. Although obviously you can use shops and hotels. Using maths, I've calculated you need to do about 200 kilometres or 125 miles a day for 20 days if I'm going to get my sticker. So knowing the sort of power I can maintain for long periods of time was going to be critical. So anyway, it was now time for the most important test, which was to calculate my VO2 max. And this was the one that my ego was really interested in. So I knew I had to give it everything. Your VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during intense exercise. So basically it shows how fit you are. But unlike your lactic threshold, it has no relation to how much cake you can eat. So let's see how I did.
Brilliant, Kevin, brilliant. Okay, and rest there.
And this was the third thing that hurt, although not as much as the 7 pinpricks into my finger. So we sat down to find out what this all meant. I really wanted to know how this was going to help with my North Cape 4000 training, and also how the findings compared with the numbers I would get on my Garmin watch. However, before we could consider any of these things, my ego needed to know what my VO2 max was and how it compared with other old blokes. Until this was out of the way, all the other information would just be noise.
Here on the chart there you can see that your VO2 max peaked as we would expect right at the end of the test there. You can see the unit there, VO2 in millilitres per minute per kg. Yours ranked at 53, which for a male of your age is an excellent VO2 max. Really, really impressive.
Keep that being.
Yeah.
From the chart, my ego was pleased to see I was off the scale fit for someone of my age. This meant it could relax, and we could proceed to the rest of the data. It was good to see that my Garmin watch also predicted that I'd have a VO2 max of 53. This was very reassuring and means that I can trust my watch for VO2 max statistics going forward. For the challenges I have coming up, and the most important test was the first one, the one that ended with my hurty finger. This showed the power and heart rate I should train at to improve my endurance. It's called the aerobic threshold. In terms of the science, this is the point at which our body can efficiently deal with any build-up of lactic acid. This is where most of my training should be done going forward. Surprisingly, the power and heart rate figures the test produced were a lot higher than I currently operate at on my base endurance or zone 2 rides. It's also the best zone for fat burning, so maximising the amount of cake you can consume in a ride. Definitely the best zone to train in. The second part of the test showed my lactic threshold, which is close to another cyclist's favourite term, your functional threshold power or FTP. It's the point at which your body cannot get rid of the lactic being built up. It marks the upper limit for sustainable effort. It's the sort of power output you can maintain for an hour or so. My watch wasn't so good at predicting this, as the test gave my FTP as 3.71 watts per kilogram compared with just 3.31 from my watch. So again, the test demonstrated what a lazy chap I am, as I should be pushing myself a lot harder when I'm doing this sort of training. So Jack took all this data and calculated the power and heart rate I should be operating in the 7 different power zones. This is going to prove extremely useful in the future as I put together training plans for the different types of events I'd like to take part in. Doing these tests was certainly worthwhile. I've learned what power zones to train in and to focus my endurance training for North Cape 4000 in Zone 2. The data has enabled me to calculate my power to cake ratio, which is critical on most of my rides. I've also learned that I'm very fit for an old bloke, which has pleased my ego no end. And finally, based on a sample size of 1, the Garmin watch is pretty accurate at predicting your VO2 max. So a big thanks to Jack and the Porsche Human Performance Lab, and of course to Mrs. Crusader for her excellent camera work. Since doing these tests, I've started to operate at the higher power level suggested, and there's been no obvious increase in my fatigue. So North Cape 4000, here I come.